As you can see here, we do have our dependency injection file in infrastructure, so it does inject DB context and identity services. And for the application, we do have our dependency injection file. Now we do have a typo here, so this is this and not ref. We do have now our dependency injection file in the application layer. Now we need to inject both in the API layer. So let's go to the API program.cs file, and this we type these two lines. So this is gonna inject infrastructure and application, and we're passing the builder.configuration because we're gonna use it right here. So yeah, so we're gonna use the services and the configuration passed from the program.cs file. So to make sure everything is working correctly, we're gonna do .NET restore, gonna do .NET build. We're gonna paste in now this command. So we're gonna create our first migration. We're gonna specify our the project that contains the application DB context, which is the infrastructure, and then we're gonna do our startup project, which is the API. So let's type in. We should get an error here. Yeah, because our API layer doesn't have the entity framework or .design library. So let's get that. So let's go to the API bookstore. Let's put it down here. So we need this library, as you can see. Now let's go to the API.NET restore. Let's get back in .NET build. So the build has succeeded. So as you can see, we do have our first migration here. So to update our database, we're gonna use this command. So it's almost the same as the first command. So we specify the projects where we have the application context and the startup projects. We're gonna do update. So as you can see, I updated my database, and if I go to my localhost, you can see it here. I do have my books table, I do have my users and the roles and all of that. So our database is set up, and now we're gonna start making our first API endpoint. Now we're going to make our first endpoint. So let's start by making a repository. So let's go to the domain. Let's make a repository folder. We're gonna make a new class. It's gonna be interface book repository. So this is gonna be our contract to make the for the book repository. So we're gonna paste in this code. So we're gonna have an interface or a contract. So with this method, we're gonna get all the books and so on. This one is for getting one book, this one is for adding, and so on. But as you can see, we need a book DTO. So let's go ahead and make our DTOs. We're gonna make a book DTO, new class, book DTO. We're gonna paste in this code. So this is our book DTO. Let's go back and import it. Let's remove this. Now we need to make the implementation of this repository. So let's go ahead to the infrastructure. Let's make a new folder called repository. We're gonna make our first repository implementation. It's gonna be book repository. We're gonna paste in this code. So just correct these. Okay, so we do have our repository ready. If you go to add book, we're gonna add books from the application DB context and so on. Now let's go register that in the IOC dependency injection. So we're gonna paste in this line right here, add scoped. So let's import these. So this is the contracts and this is the implementation, and now we do have it in our container, so we can inject it wherever we want. And we're gonna inject it in the application layer where we implement our handler. So let's go ahead and make our query here. So let's go to the application layer, create a new folder, let's call it models. Let's create a book model. So we're gonna have two types of requests. So commands, we're gonna have queries. So let's start with our first query. It's gonna be a get books query. We're gonna paste in this code. So it's an I request. So it's gonna return a list of book DTOs. So fix this S right here. Okay. So now we need to create the handler for this get books query, which can actually handle the request and get us all the books. So let's go ahead and create our handler. So new C# class get books query handler. So, and let's paste this code. Now as you can see here, so we're gonna implement the iRequest handler. So we put the query here, which is get books query, and we put the results of the query, which is a list of book DTOs. And also we're gonna inject the book repository, because as I told you before, the application layer doesn't interact with the database, so it's gonna interact with the repository from the infrastructure layer that's gonna actually interact with the database. We seem to have a little problem here, so this is actually book ID and this is book ID, and there seemed to be a problem here. Let's fix the namespace. So now this is our handler and it's time to implement it in the controller. So the controller is gonna automatically give the request to the appropriate handler that's gonna actually fetch our books. So now the last step is the controller. So let's go and create our API controller. Let's call it book controller. Let's paste in this code. So we're injecting the mediator in our constructor, as you can see, and then we have this get method of get books. So what we're actually gonna do is to create a new instance of the get books query. So a new instance of get books query, then we're gonna give it to the mediator. Now the mediator is gonna send this to the right handler, so the controller doesn't need to know about the implementation. It doesn't have to know which handler we're gonna send this query. So the mediator is gonna take this query and is gonna say, okay, I'm gonna send it to the get books query handler, because as you can see here, we are implementing it and giving it in the parameters. So this is our first endpoint. Now we're gonna test it to see if it works. Now let's test if everything is working correctly. So open the terminal, navigate to bookstore.api.net, run. You're gonna run the projects, and it's on port 5030. So let's see if it works. So this is our get method, so let's execute. As you can see, it gives us a 200 success response. So right now we don't have any books in our database. So if you go here, if you go to books, there is actually nothing, but it's working. We got our response, and let's see how the flow exactly works. So in our controller we need to create a new instance of the getBooks query. Then we give it to the mediator. The mediator is gonna send this to the rights handler, which is in our case the getBooks query handler. It's gonna call the repository from the infrastructure layer, get all the books, and then return them. And that's it. So if we go to the infrastructure layer, our book repository is retrieving all the books from the application context, and that's pretty much it for the first video. That's part one. So in the next parts we're gonna do authentication, we're gonna do a whole other stuff. So if you want part two, please comment and I'll do it.